Get a load of this!
So how's it going, guys? I had a hell of a time putting this retrospective together for you. Sonic Heroes is definitely a game I wasn't quite sure how I felt. Even after I finished playing the game and 100% completing it, I still wasn't sure how I really felt about it. So I sat down, I wrote the script, and I let the ideas flow. And I was like, there's certain aspects of this game that I like, but I also have a lot of problems with it too. And you're gonna see exactly what they are. So guys, without further ado, I give you my retrospective of Sonic Heroes. Sonic Heroes is quite the departure from the two games that preceded it, which just so happened to be the Sonic Adventure series. Why they decided to go right to this without finishing out the lingering missing piece of what we thought was an obvious trilogy of games is beyond me. It's also interesting to note that this is the first Sonic game to be multi-platform. It was released for the PS2, the Xbox, and the GameCube, and we'll be looking at the GameCube version here. It's incredible that Sonic would now be exposed to one of the widest audiences ever. So this is how the game works. We've got 4 teams: Team Sonic, Team Dark, Team Rose, and Team Chaotix. And each team has 3 members each of which represent speed, flying, and power. Each team has their own separate story and goes through the same 2-act long stages. Now, this is an interesting concept when we compare this format with Sonic Adventure, having 6 separate stories that had you controlling only one character in each of the stories, and Sonic Adventure 2, which had 2 separate stories with you playing as 3 different characters in each story, but not at the same time. That's kind of where Sonic Heroes kind of makes sense as a follow-up to the Adventure series, as it has more individual stories like Sonic Adventure 1, but combines them into teams like Sonic Adventure 2. But instead of taking turns between teammates, you're playing as the team itself and can switch between them at the push of a button. Plus, you can upgrade the power of your attacks and increase the length of flight for the flying character by collecting power-ups. And when you build up the Team Blast meter, you can perform a Team Blast attack, which is an awesome and satisfying screen-clearing attack. These are fresh and fun game mechanics that give the game a different feel from the Adventure series and any Sonic game before it. It's definitely a welcome change, and while it's not exactly something that I would like to see return, it gives Sonic Heroes its own unique identity. As far as the story, it's a bit bare bones. There's 4 different stories and they really don't even tie together at all. In Sonic's story, he receives a note from Dr. Eggman with a challenge to stop his latest plot to use a new weapon to take over the world. This is pretty underwhelming considering the over-the-top plot of the Adventure series. There was way more creativity put into those 2 games, even if many parts of Adventure 2 didn't quite add up. This is just an incredibly bland plot, and it doesn't get any better across the other 3 stories. Team Dark sees Shadow, Rouge, and a new Eggman robot, E-123 Omega, teaming up to take down Eggman as well. Shadow is woken up by Rouge as she's infiltrating Eggman's base, and it's not even explained how Eggman recovered him following Sonic Adventure 2, because even worse, he's got amnesia. Oh no, not this old trope. The funny thing is, by the end of the game, Shadow's memories are never recovered. It's basically a total reset of Shadow's character, and I'm not sure why this is. It just is, I guess. The writing just feels incomplete here. They'll come upon E-123 Omega, who is obviously meant to be a replacement for the now destroyed E-102 Gamma from Sonic Adventure 1. Eggman locked Omega in a room for some reason, and he's mad at him. I just find that incredibly goofy. He couldn't just blast out of there. Another E-Series robot turning on Eggman? Maybe it's time to cancel this line of robots, don't you think? Maybe move on to the F-line or something. Team Rose sees Amy Rose taking the lead with the much despised Big the Cat making his triumphant return, and Cream the Rabbit making her debut in 3D, previously debuting in the 2D handheld game Sonic Advance 2. Once again, the big oaf has lost Froggy and Cream has lost Cheese, and there's no bagels in sight. Huh?
Good one. That was bad.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. To round things out, Team Chaotix is reintroduced for the first time since the Black Sheep 32X game, Knuckles Chaotix, but Mighty, Heavy, and Bomb, who were a part of the original team, are nowhere to be found. This time around, Vector, Charmy, and Espio are a detective agency, and I love their personalities, and I like how this actually was pretty consistent in the Sonic X anime. They're contacted by a mysterious client who really makes these guys look like fucking idiots with random tasks with really no real goal. So we'll come back to the overall story in a bit and why it doesn't exactly do it for me like previous Sonic stories. So as I've stated, I am mixed on the game. And one of the biggest reasons is the controls and the monotonous nature of the story progression and the cheap nature of some of the level design. If you go back to my Sonic Adventure 2 review, you will see that there were certain moments, despite liking the game, annoyed me to no end. And a lot had to do with some really unfair and weird design choices. I feel like that questionable level design is amplified even more in Sonic Heroes, especially when you get to stages like Rail Canyon and Mystic Mansion. We'll get to those stages in a bit. Now, your overall gameplay experience actually changes depending on which team you pick. Team Sonic is kind of like the normal mode. Team Dark is the horror mode with more enemies and some added challenges to make things trickier. Team Rose is the easiest and the most pleasant experience. Team Chaotix is a partial scavenger hunt with mission-based gameplay where you find a specific amount of a designated item or complete a certain task in each stage. Let me just say, Team Sonic stages can be very long, a bit too long if you ask me, and Team Darks are way too fucking long. Like, holy shit, I consider these stages to be the precursor to Eggman Land in Sonic Unleashed. Things just get a bit too excessive, and one of this game's biggest enemies is the questionable nature of the controls. They're loose, way too loose in fact, and I don't feel like I'm in control at all times because this game has plenty of opportunities to have you fly off a ledge and plummet to an untimely demise. It makes me always want to utilize the flying characters such as Tails or Rouge because not only are they capable of flying over said hazards, but they generally move slower, and thus make it easier to avoid unceremoniously biting the fucking big one due to untidy controls. I wouldn't say the controls are horrible, but they're certainly not great. They're serviceable, but when I'm not feeling inclined to go as fast as I can in the Sonic game, I feel like something is certainly wrong here. Don't get me wrong, contrary to some goofs on the internet and right here on YouTube, Sonic has never been mostly about speed. Sonic is first and foremost a platformer. This game gets me nervous as hell, especially on stages like Final Fortress, where things can get very platform heavy and the controls are just so finicky, and I always feel like I'm losing control, especially when using the power character, like Knuckles and Omega, who throw lunging punches and they can send you careening off the edge of a platform. There's nothing more frustrating in a game where the death is almost purely accidental due to faulty design and not due to poor platforming on the part of the player. It greatly detracts from the fun when you feel like your greatest enemy isn't any of Eggman's robots, but the game's controls themselves. Plus, with some of these levels being quite lengthy, especially with Team Darks, making one too many wrong moves will lead to a game over and having you start back from Act 1. And I felt this agony to be way more agonizing than it ever was in previous games, because I'm not kidding when I say these levels are long. They can be real marathons. In Mystic Mansion, there are some pain in the ass challenges that take my control issues in a different direction. Take this wall jumping part. It sure looks cool, but when you have to grind on this webbing as you land, and your foot can easily, and I do mean easily, be misjudged. I can't begin to tell you how uncertain this part is. Sometimes you don't touch the analog stick, and sometimes you do. Your guess is as good as mine. Then you have this part where, thank God, they only do this with Team Sonic, and it's this part where you have to perform the homing attack and go from enemy to enemy, and one touch of the joystick will send you into the abyss. There was nothing like getting to this part with only one life left and discovering this cold hard fact. There was just so many weird control-based issues in this game that end up becoming extremely infuriating. And trust me, there's more. There's way more. Like this roller coaster. I'm told to brake and jump, but I always end up running into these pumpkin-headed bastards. Why do the controls seem to be engineered by Eggman himself? For this reason, playing as Team Rose seems to be the most pleasant experience because their stages are shorter, actually half the length, and you get to skip a lot of the more frustrating parts of the stages. The length of Team Rose's stages should have been the length for all the teams. Team Chaotic sometimes can be less frustrating in some parts, but you'll be left searching for stuff that can be easy to miss sometimes, which can easily extend your playtime. Plus, these stages just don't feel big enough to warrant searching, as they're pretty linear to say the least, and while some things may be cleverly hidden, but they really don't mesh well with these stages. Like when you're fighting to go up a downward ramp in Hang Castle, as it doesn't even look like you're supposed to, because the camera is even fighting against you. But you're supposed to find one of the keys. Well, I missed this key the first time because it didn't look like I could go up here because the camera just didn't agree, and so I pressed on. But when I was combing the level multiple times with only 9 out of the 10 keys, I decided to try again, only to find out that I could indeed go up this ramp and onto a section of the castle where the key awaited me. Why is this game always fighting me? I mean, this castle looks great, and I had tons of fun playing this with the other teams, especially with the upside down mechanic, hence the name Hang Castle, as you can flip the level entirely with these glowing orbs, and this goes for many of the stages, lots of them. Most of them are well designed aesthetically, and a lot of the mechanics are fun in theory. Sometimes in execution, but not consistently in execution. And that's my problem. These controls are unpredictable and lead me to shake my controller, gritting my teeth, and cursing like a demented madman more times than I care to admit. Plus, I mentioned the rails being a bit uneven in the controls department in Sonic Adventure 2, but you know what? It was a new mechanic. We can cut them some slack for being experimental and not getting things totally right the first time around, but the mechanic returns and final chases grind heavy mechanics are repurposed in Rail Canyon and Bullet Station, and things are even looser and more unpredictable. Plus, there's times when you're supposed to land on a rail and you need to react at a moment's notice, and before you know it, you're once again plummeting into the unknown due to poor collision. Landing on the rails just feels way harder than I'm sure it was intended to be. If you're just 1 pixel off, you're not grinding on these rails. You're in for a big fall. For this reason, as I stated, the flying character on your team is very useful for repositioning yourself if you miss a landing. This game, just like many stages in Sonic Adventure 2, has a weird obsession with stages with no bottoms, and Sonic Heroes loves these types of stages. Even in the jungle stages, you still have no floor, and if there's a floor, there's water right below you, and if there's no water, and there's a floor like in Mystic Mansion, don't worry because there soon won't be a floor later in the level. Why does this game literally have you on the edge the whole time? I'm on the edge literally because of the loose controls and the attacks that can accidentally send you over the edge, and I am on the edge figuratively as I am fearing that I'm about to lose a life at any moment due to one simple slip of an inadvertent controller input. Is it so much to ask for some solid ground? Like after Sonic Adventure 1, it's as if Sonic Team was like, you know what, floors, fuck them, we don't need them. Plus, when there's not bottomless chasms, you'll get moments that are cool, like returning to a classic staple like the pinball mechanics in the casino stages. There wasn't a casino themed stage in Sonic Adventure 2, so Sonic Team broke into a cold sweat because there needs to be a casino level in a Sonic game. There's just no way there can't be. But man, the mechanics here are very touchy. It feels so strange to control, and it feels way too awkward to navigate out of the pinball table and progress. I have sometimes spent several minutes trying to escape this tortured chamber of flippers and bumpers. The physics are just way off. Remember how well the pinball physics worked in Sonic Adventure 1? What exactly happened here? It's just another example of how the controls were completely goofed up this time around. I can think of another example as a matter of fact, and that's in certain sections where you'll have to use the flying character to pull a switch that's attached to a wall. And I remember in Final Fortress how it took me several minutes to get Tails to pull it as he hovered, and it was an awkward, pace-breaking terror of epic proportions. When I am having problems pulling a fucking switch, you know there's something drastically wrong here. Overall, when it comes to stage length and sloppy controls and mechanics, this is not a good mix, because sometimes you just want the stage to end. If you get a better feel for the stages and know what to expect, then the game will get increasingly more fun. But to first timers, God help you, you're sure to rage more than a few times, trust me. As far as boss battles go, you'll be facing off against Eggman in various flying craft, and you'll discover upon defeating him that it wasn't Eggman after all, but a robot decoy. And you'll also have these marathon fights against wave after wave of badniks. These enemy wave fights felt kinda lazy, to be honest, and there's 2 of them. Then you have these team fights where you will battle against the other teams. Apparently, Amy wants to beat the ever-loving shit out of Sonic because this will leave him with no other choice but to marry her. I did say ever-loving, didn't I? I mean, damn Amy, I know love hurts, but this is probably the most literal interpretation I've ever seen. These fights are just a giant clusterfuck. The main strategy is to knock all the opposing teammates off the edge of the platform the fight takes place on. It's nice to have someone else falling off a ledge for a change, that's for sure. You're just basically hitting attack after attack until you get lucky, and it just feels really messy, and you'll basically just want to use the power character to punch everyone until they all fall off, and of course you'll risk falling off yourself due to the lunging nature of these attacks. The other thing we need to talk about is just how monotonous this game truly is. Yes, we have 4 different teams, but they're going through all the same levels, and yes, some of the levels have slight changes to accommodate these teams, and the teams do have different attacks. Well, some anyway. The point is, these playthroughs have slight differences, but not enough to justify going through them again and again. Really, only Team Chaotix feels the most different due to the nature of their mission-based gameplay. Now, in the Sonic Adventure games, you could make the argument that there were many of the same stages, but when they were very different for the most part, and there were stages that only different characters went through. The joy of playing through these different stories in Sonic Heroes just doesn't feel that strong, and if you're wondering why I don't just skip some of these stories, that's because you can't play the final chapter to get the actual ending if you don't, so it's basically required. So every team's story ends when you face off against Eggman and the Egg Emperor, but after all the stories are complete, you'll be able to play the last story just like in the adventure games. But this time you've got to collect the Chaos Emeralds. But wait, where are the Chaos Emeralds? In the adventure series they were unavoidable and were naturally collected through completing stages and progressing through the game itself. Well, this time you've got to collect keys and carry them to the end of the stage. But only in Act 2, not Act 1, which is always the more difficult stage and you cannot get hit. If you do, you lose the key and you'll need to find another. If you can, that is. There are multiple keys, not a lot, but at least there's more than one. But with stages this long, holding onto the keys can be difficult to say the least. Then after that's all said and done, say hello to the returning special stages, which were still present in the Sonic Advance series but had yet to make their 3D debut. So Sonic Heroes is actually the first 3D Sonic game to have special stages. I recommend using Team Rose to go after the keys due to the shorter length and easier nature of their stages. And the special stages are actually easy. Very easy in fact. But if you don't know what to do, they can seem nearly impossible. These stages require you to boost to catch up to a fleeing, floating Chaos Emerald. But you may think you need to press the boost button repeatedly. But if you're doing this, you will not be catching that emerald. However, if you hold the button down, you will go racing towards the emerald at blazing speed, and you will catch it in mere seconds. This information is very hard to find online, and it seems like the majority of gamers who played this game have no idea that you're supposed to hold down the button, leading many people to believe these stages are extremely difficult. The most unfair thing here is if you do fail, you'll have to go through all 2 acts of the stage to try again. But wait a second, there's keys in Act 1. And if you carry one to the end, you will get to enter a special stage. But it's just for rings. Whose bright idea was this? Having you go through long levels just for another shot at the emerald is way too demanding. Why? And another reason Team Rose simply needs to be your go-to way of collecting the emeralds. So after acquiring all 7 emeralds and accessing the last story, you will learn that Eggman has been locked in a room the whole time by Metal Sonic. So are you telling me all the times we saw Eggman through the game, they were all robot decoys? Did Metal Sonic actually send that note to Sonic in the beginning of the game? Or was that Eggman during those robot waves? And he was captured somewhere in the middle? I mean, this is pretty elaborate a plot by Metal Sonic. Did he command Eggman's entire army of robots as well? Anyway, Metal reveals himself to the team and informs them he has scanned all of their DNA, which will be used to power himself up and transform into a massive behemoth. You will need to fight him using each team, and as you get to the final phase, you will transform into Super Sonic. And we get confirmation that Super Knuckles and Super Tails do not exist in the 3D realm because they only get these bubbles around them. Apparently, hedgehogs are the only species allowed to go super. You will hear this game's version of Live and Learn, What I'm Made Of, a really heroic sounding final boss track by Crush 40. I do like the idea of having Metal Sonic being the main villain of the game, pushing his own master Eggman to the side. Plus, Metal hadn't been seen since Knuckles Chaotix, so it was an unexpected change of pace, even if the story feels like so much of a come down from the apocalyptic tales that were told in the Adventure series. Also, I just had to mention before giving my final thoughts that the soundtrack is as good as you'd expect from a Sonic game. but it's a step down from the Adventure series, that's for sure. But we still have plenty of fantastic music here. You guys might have recognized Team Dark's theme being used as my intro music for the past few months. The Egg Albatross theme is probably my favorite, just such a rocking tune. I've just never been crazy about Seaside Hill, and it's really a very weak track for a first Sonic stage. Compare this with the music found in Emerald Coast and City Escape, and you'll see how truly average the track is. As a matter of fact, it tries to sound a bit like Emerald Coast with the beach vibes, but it's nowhere close. But tracks like Casino Park and Mystic Mansion are top tier tunes with that classic Sonic groove. So Sonic Heroes is definitely a flawed experience. It seemed like it wanted to break off from Sonic Adventure and the end of the world style scenarios, but continue the tradition of giving players access to multiple characters, but wanted to develop a clever way to tie some of these characters together. Could you imagine playing as 12 separate characters in 12 separate stories? That would have been insane to say the least. But the controls are the biggest letdown here. The controls were so tight in the Adventure games, and yes, we got some questionable control-based moments in Adventure 2, but they were definitely way better than what we have here in Heroes. Sonic Heroes has some fun levels and some fun mechanics, but there's a lot of frustration to be had. I think if you're a big Sonic fan like me, you'll still find a lot to enjoy, but it's certainly not one of Sonic's better titles. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get all notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support, and thanks again for watching guys. I'll see you next time.